The dot-com bubble burst.
Fannie Mae sees no end to housing boom.
Wall Street chaos. Lehman Brothers bankrupt. Bank of America buys Merrill.
Flash crash. Machines run amok.
10-year bull market. No end in sight.
Trade war escalates. Market sinks on fears.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this episode of People and Money, where we discuss money and current events that influence financial markets both here and abroad. This episode of People and Money is brought to you by Ascensus. Ascensus is the largest independent record-keeping service provider, third-party administrator, and government savings facilitator in the United States. They aspire to make a difference and to help people save for what matters most: retirement, education, and healthcare. They have unparalleled insights into how millions are saving for the future, and their partners can help maximize success for their plan participants. Their proven combination of technology, expertise, and collaborative partnership helps individuals and families build greater confidence in their financial futures. David, welcome to this edition of People and Money. We have a lot to talk about today. As president of Ascensus, you have a unique perspective on the American landscape of retirement planning and savings in general. But before we get into the meat of the discussion, let's find out a little bit more about you. Let's start with Built to Last. Tell us a little bit how you got into the music biz.
Well, my mom would say it was back when I was 9 years old, and for $1 a day, she signed me up for guitar lessons from a local kid down the block. And it's been a joy and a passion of mine. While I'm not the most skilled musician, it's always been a lot of fun to be able to come together with other people and perform music. So I've made it a habit of trying to form a little rock band in each one of the organizations I've been a part of through the years.
Is it difficult to find other competent band members?
At times it is. At times it's easy to find folks that are confident but not well skilled. Other times lots of well skilled folks that are less confident. So finding that perfect combination is important.
You know, it's funny because my son, who's 29 years old and is a CFP and works at a billion-dollar RIA, he was a tremendous musician, played a number of different joints in Los Angeles, such as the Troubadour and Whiskey A Go-Go and a couple of others. And I thought he was going to he was going to make it big, and then he kind of fell back and said, you know what, I can't make more than like $9 an hour at that. So my dream was crushed, but he's doing pretty well. I always told him, I said, nobody remembers their financial advisor, but everybody will remember Clapton.
Right. Well, listen, he's certainly way out of my league, but I think performing, whether it's in a band or in an orchestra or those that perform on stage as part of plays and the like, is it's a great metaphor for business, right? People coming together with different skills and experiences and talents and trying to make music out of it is a wonderful process, and when it's well practiced and well rehearsed, can result in some great outcomes.
And it's a lot of fun. So let's go to your past. Where were you from originally?
So I'm proud to say I was born in the Bronx. Gives me a little New York street cred, but I really grew up in a working class town in central New Jersey.
Okay. What did your parents do?
My dad was an electrical engineer for Bell Labs, and he was the youngest son of an Italian immigrant family. Three boys. He was the youngest and the only one to attend college. Put himself through school literally selling peanuts at the Bronx Zoo. And my mom was met him in the Bronx during their early days, and she was a wonderful homemaker and spent a couple of decades as an office manager for a local eye doctor in town.
You made it the hard way, as they say.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit of pride on behalf of my parents, and I think it's a great illustration of the American dream. Not to overstate it, but to have come from and observed two families that were immigrant families, in a sense, and two parents who really struggled to enter the middle class and really had no other goal or ambition in their lives other than to be able to save enough to put their kids in college and to have a little bit left over to have a secure and happy retirement, to see their ability to accomplish that and to have had the benefit of a good education and now be able to achieve some of the things that Pauline, my wife, and I have been able to achieve in our careers and bestow some wonderful opportunities, even greater opportunities on our own children. I think that's what the American dream is all about, and for all of us in the savings industry, helping more Americans achieve those goals is certainly a passion.
I agree completely. The American dream is not as well appreciated sometimes as it should be, either by some individuals or many individuals, and certainly some politicians. But it is an incredible machine in creating dynamic people.
Yeah, and savings is at the core of it, right? It's people have said, right, it's not what you make, it's what you spend and what you save. And for a society and hopefully a culture that respects and appreciates savings and focuses more on savings, I think we'll be a better nation for it.
Absolutely. I think every father has told their child, just put 10% of what you make away and everything will be fine.
And those fathers are all right.
That's true. So what was your first non-Wall Street job?
So I'm proud to say that after being declined or denied jobs at wonderful establishments, fast food establishments, and otherwise, I started my own business in high school with a friend of mine, and we were able to build a pretty successful lawn service, which kept us very occupied and put some nice coin in our pocket back in the day. And then during college, I worked at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, supervising teams of kids in the games department there, which was a really wonderful experience, sort of getting a greater appreciation of the service industry. And fortunately, it was where I met my wife, my future wife. So those were the fun high school and college experiences before Wall Street.
You met your wife at Six Flags, New Jersey?
Six Flags Great Adventure. You got it.
That's a great story. I saw that you received your MBA from the Stern School of Business at NYU, and I have a daughter that did both her undergraduate and graduate work at NYU, and I know we're going to be talking a little bit about college savings and 529 plans, but based upon what I paid, there's absolutely no 529 plan in the world big enough to handle the freight for an NYU education.
It is not an inexpensive school, but I'm sure you're pleased with the quality of the education she is that she's receiving there, no doubt.
Yeah, she's doing very well. Thank you. So you started out in the retirement business or the financial services business with what company?
So I started my career at Prudential as a management intern. And I'll tell you, it was my career in retirement and more broadly the sort of savings and investment world was a very fortunate accident, but very much an accidental career. I came out of school thinking I was going to be sort of more focused in sort of finance in a corporate sense. And I was fortunate enough that the head of human resources at Prudential at the time took a liking to me, called me in his office one day told me he had a wonderful opportunity that I was way too young and inexperienced to actually take, but he wanted to sort of help me spread my wings and reach high. I was thinking he was going to send me to Europe to help start a new business or be the special assistant to one of the other business leaders, and he informed me that I was going to be Prudential's benefit manager. And I had no idea what that was and what it meant, but it actually exposed me to the importance of more broadly, right, benefits programs and savings programs, and really I guess whet my appetite for the career that's now spanned close to 30 years.
Well, you've done very, very well. I have a note here that you worked at J.P. Morgan at one point. Was that correct?
I did. Yeah, it was a great privilege working there for a number of years, helping to grow its retirement investment solutions business, and then ultimately leading their retirement services business.
So were you there with when Jamie Dimon was there?
Oh, you bet. You bet.
What was it like working for him? The people that I think many Americans would like to see become the president.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it was a total privilege and an amazing learning experience. I've come, as you sort of age, you recognize that few people really live up to their press or their hype. And in my experience, Jamie Dimon is one individual that actually does. His combination of domain expertise and his commercial instincts and his leadership qualities, I'd say particularly those sort of in the later stages of his career, are pretty unique and very powerful. So it was really a great experience being part of a Jamie Dimon-led organization.
I think a lot of people feel exactly the same way you do. But let's talk about your current position at Ascensus. When did you join Ascensus?
I joined a little bit less than 2 years ago, and was a really fortunate accident, I guess, in a way, having a long relationship with Bob Guillocheau, our current CEO, and as Ascensus was rapidly growing and expanding, looking for leadership and some additional skills and capabilities to add to the wonderful team that we have here at Ascensus today. I was very fortunate to get the call, and it's been a great experience being a part of Ascensus.
Yeah, we think of Ascensus as really a technology company that just happens to be in the retirement business, but it does so many more things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Ascensus does for the American savings industry?
Yeah. Well, I'd start with saying, we really feel we have a noble purpose. Back to our earlier discussion, we help today close to 10 million Americans save for what matters most in their lives: their retirement, their children's education, and their health care. So if you think about that in commercial terms, what we are is really the largest independent tech-enabled service provider supporting the delivery of tax-advantaged savings vehicles. So we, as you said, we provide technology solutions, service, and distribution support to help power other financial institutions, asset managers, and government entities in the delivery of their savings programs across DC, DB, health, HSA, 529, state-sponsored retirement facilitated programs, and others.
What are some of the trends you're seeing in retirement? When I got into this business, during the 20th century, not the 21st, 401k plans were fairly new, especially in the smaller market, but now those are pretty much table stakes. Everybody is doing it, but are they doing it enough, and are they investing properly? Are people saving enough? That's the big problem, or the big question, I should say.
Yeah, I'd say, well, first off, from a trend perspective, I agree with your observation that while we still haven't optimized savings within defined contribution programs, and I'm sure we'll speak more about that, the challenge for the typical American worker is determining how to optimize their saving across various needs, from retirement to their children's education to their health care, et cetera, in a world where the individual is taking on more responsibility for saving for long-term needs, right, relative to other institutions, the government, or their employer, and where the costs of those expenses are escalating rapidly. Certainly, the case with healthcare, and as you had referenced earlier, education. So, are people saving enough is a very complicated question, and there's very encouraging, I'd say, progress on multiple fronts. Certainly, we've seen in defined contribution programs with auto features and auto increase, and more programmatic saving, that it's having a real positive impact. But there's more work to do. I'd also suggest, I think we need to break it down and think about different populations and different needs. We have a tendency, I think, in our industry to use averages and sort of get lost in high level numbers rather than really thinking about the specifics. If you consider savings at the workplace, and just consider younger people, their greatest need at that stage in their life is just to start saving. And while some of them don't heed our parents' advice to save a full 10% from the day they go to work because of other needs, getting them to start early is really the first objective. And if we can get them starting to save early and escalate at a reasonable rate early in their careers, that's going to go a long way to solving the problem. If you think about the middle stage workers, the risks are different. These folks are still at a point in their careers where if they've been undersaved earlier in their lives, there's an opportunity to catch up. So maximizing savings and ensuring that they're building portfolios that are diversified and serve them well for the longer term is very important. And then if you think of later stage workers, unfortunately, there's no amount of saving that's going to happen within a couple of years' time that's going to make up for significant shortfalls through the earlier course of a career or lifetime. But there's still a tremendous opportunity to be thinking critically about decumulation, understanding more clearly how much can be spent, and putting in place a strategy and a plan for extending one's savings to the greatest degree possible through retirement. So those are very different needs at very different stages of the career, and it's good to see, I think, plan sponsors and advisors and the retirement community broadly, providers, asset managers, and the like, are recognizing the opportunities to focus on those populations in different ways.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you a couple questions about averages, and do you have any analytics that tell you what a Gen Xer is putting away, what their savings rate is versus a baby boomer versus a millennial?
Yeah, we do look at try and look at age bands and average account balances and average deferral rates, and certainly there's published statistics and a lot of the industry studies out there. Not surprisingly, and thankfully, older workers tend to have higher account balances. But again, a little bit gets lost in the averages. And I think the other aspect of this that the industry has come to recognize is that you could have two 55-year-old individuals that have extremely different life circumstances, right? In terms of their marital status, number of children, the obviously income of those individuals, the health status of those individuals, which is a really important indicator of savings needs, particularly through the retirement experience with higher healthcare expenses or projected healthcare expenses. So one of the things we try and do as a provider and as a resource to the advisor community is provide tools and resources and analytics to help personalize information and data for the individual. We have a retirement outlook tool, for example, that enables a participant to understand or look at, critically at an income projection and how their current savings can accumulate over time and what that means as it relates to their expenses in retirement. And I think those opportunities for people to think critically not only about sort of their balance today, or for us to look at average balances for people at different ages, but really to be able to inform their thinking based on their life circumstances is the next big opportunity in front of us from an industry perspective.
Before we continue, let's hear another word from our sponsor.
Ascensus is the largest independent record-keeping services provider, third-party administrator, and government savings facilitator in the United States. We aspire to make a difference and to help people save for what matters most: retirement, education, and healthcare. We have unparalleled insights into how millions are saving for the future and how our partners can help maximize success for their plan participants. Our proven combination of technology, expertise, and collaborative partnerships helps individuals and families build greater confidence in their financial futures.
Do you find that is there a difference in the number of people or the percentage of a group such as millennials versus baby boomers versus Gen Xers versus whatever the next one is that are saving and at different rates? So are millennials getting into the 401k side? Are they investing in their retirement at an early age, which hardly anybody wants to think about because of all the debt that they're in? And are baby boomers still continuing to, are they maximizing their opportunities to invest, especially those that are above 50 years old, which can utilize a catch-up?
Yeah, by and large, and again, hate to use averages, but when you just look at age bands, those under 25, call it 25 to 35, 35 to 45, go up by increments of 10 years, you see sort of a steady and consistent increase in the average deferral rate, and you see a consistent increase in the average account balance. So, without diving into that data more deeply, it tells us in general that aside from the generational sort of biases from more of a cultural perspective or how different generations tend to act or behave or be influenced, that in general, as people are aging, regardless of that cohort that they're from, we are seeing increasing savings over time.
That's good to hear. Now, from what I understand, there's about 80 million people in the United States that are invested in some type of retirement plan, probably either a 401k or a 403b plan through their company or school district or municipality. But I've also heard that there's about 40 million Americans that don't have access to a retirement plan. And I know that there's been some discussions with states, municipalities, and even the federal government in trying to reach out to them. A, what can be done for those folks to give them something to be able to save in? And then B, are you involved in anything at Ascensus that may be reaching out to those individuals that currently don't have access to a plan?
Yeah, no, great question. And just to step back from those numbers that reported 40 million of Americans, I've heard numbers as high as 55 million Americans that don't have access to a retirement program. What's going on there? And I think this is one of the major trends that you had asked about previously. The gig economy is for real, and I think today in people's minds, we think about the Uber or the Lyft driver, and maybe don't appreciate the magnitude or the number of people today that are employed in untraditional ways, or at least in the absence of a traditional employer, receiving full benefits. Estimates upwards of 20 million Americans today that would fall into these categories, and increasingly more of them in highly skilled professions, accountants and technologists, that are beginning to fall into these categories. In general, gig workers earn 42% less annually than traditional workers. Yeah,
42%. Wow.
42% less. About 16%, only 16%, are enrolled in employer-sponsored plans. And, estimates are that by 2020, 1 in 5 workers may be in a contingent type of arrangement. So that's just a really important point to recognize as we think about how we address the issue, and use multiple, sort of ways to get at that population. So one way certainly is to ensure that more people are put on the savings path automatically as a function of their participation in the workplace. And we know that, there's still a large number of smaller employers that don't yet offer traditional defined contribution plans. We also know that while there's significant support in Washington for better retirement system, more savings, that it's probably going to be some time before the political forces move towards some form of automatic savings for all individuals in the workplace. And in the absence of that, the states have recognized an opportunity to have impact. They see the benefit of having more folks saving more in their states for a whole bunch of economic reasons and political reasons. And they also recognize that in the absence of well-saved constituents, that the states ultimately are going to be dealing with a significant financial burden in their states from a budget perspective over time. So, they're jumping in. Oregon, Illinois, and California have already launched state-facilitated auto IRA programs. So these are not traditional defined contribution plans. They conform, all 3 of those states conform to the Roth IRA savings structure. And employers don't take any fiduciary responsibility for implementing these programs, but in these states are required to auto-deduct savings for their workers at a specific percentage. Many of the states also with some form of escalation or potential for escalation, with an ability for workers to be able to opt out of those programs if they so choose. And the results have been really striking. Ascensus, you had asked our sort of involvement here. We've been fortunate enough to be selected as the technology provider and administrator for the first 3 states to launch these programs. And what we're seeing is that the opt-out rates on behalf of the individuals are not any greater than what we're seeing in traditional defined contribution programs. We are seeing the majority of people keeping their contributions at the 5% or so, which is the target auto deferral rate. And we see these balances starting to grow, albeit slowly. given the fact that many workers in smaller companies tend to earn less than workers in larger companies. So it's having an impact. We expect to see more involvement across a variety of additional states. There's already been legislation passed in a number of other states and legislation pending in several others. We also think this is going to be a great opportunity to drive more traditional defined contribution plan formation. In fact, there's been studies done by Pew Research and others that suggest that for a small employer that now has a choice of either implementing a state facilitated program, or going to market and just launching a traditional defined contribution plan, that upwards of 50% say they'd just assume go launch a full defined contribution plan. It's also a great opportunity for advisors to be able to reach out to the small business community and help them sort through those choices and select the option that's going to be best for those small business owners and ultimately for their workers.
So you're involved in the California Savings Program, the Oregon Savings Program, and the Illinois Savings Program?
That's correct.
Wow. You've got some good salespeople.
Well, we like to think it's more a function of our experience working with organizations to be able to design and deliver really successful savings programs. And the technology has a lot to do with it as well. I think this is what's made this a problematic or potentially problematic challenge for the states and for the provider community, is because these are new programs that ultimately will be enrolling millions of individuals. So between those three states, there's 9 million individuals that will be auto-enrolled into these programs. But there's not a lot of assets, right, in these plans, and therefore there's a real challenge for an administrator, in this case Ascensus, to be able to deliver very high quality service very efficiently and be able to provide those services to the state and ultimately to the facilitator of these plans at a really reasonable cost. And that's hard to do with legacy systems. It was much easier for us to achieve having really constructed a purpose-built technology specifically for the marketplace.
Let's talk about some recent things that have been happening in the retirement business. The House of Representatives passed their version of the Secure Act, and which is going to have some impact on retirement savings. And then for older people, that have invested their money for 30, 35, maybe almost 40 years now, they're getting to a point where they could see another economic dislocation like you saw in 2008, or the dot-com bust in 2001 or 2000, I should say. And I'm old enough to remember the crash of 1987. So one of the aspects of the Secure Act is going to be retirement income, guaranteed income streams, which would include both a target date type of portfolio and an insurance contract, such as an annuity. Is the census ready for something like that, or is the market ready for that? And do you think people will actually invest in those, invest in a steady stream of income, very similar to what used to be the defined benefit, where you worked at a place for 30 years and then you got a check a month for the rest of your life?
Yeah. I truly believe and really hope that we get there, right, as an industry. I think we're all familiar with some of the challenges of seeing more of these types of solutions in the market, and they include the fiduciary responsibility for selecting these programs and putting them in place, and selecting providers, the portability of these types of solutions across various plans, and some of the administrative challenges and costs related to the products and solutions in the marketplace. I think that the opportunity to address this need within the plan really sets us up and sets individuals up for success, especially when we think about the benefits of auto features and the ability to guide people to better saving solutions within the workplace. With that said, a lot of these solutions have been packaged in a way where we've seen less adoption in the market than is actually warranted when you just think about the tremendous need that exists and the benefit that individuals would receive from these types of capabilities. So a couple of things are happening in terms of innovation. So while there's some obstacles to adoption of these types of solutions, there's a lot of innovation that's happening in the market. There are some that are looking for ways to introduce these solutions at point of rollover or retirement, with a belief that with the engagement of an advisor or other professionals helping to illustrate the benefits and the value of these solutions, that they'll be more embraced. There are others that are considering more unique ways to combine portfolio design across both market-based investments alongside forms of annuity guarantees or insurance guarantees, which create a little bit more flexibility and also manage costs more effectively in these programs. And there's other examples as well. So with a little bit of relief here in the form of hopefully the passage of the Secure Act, which will address the fiduciary component of it in large measure, and with some additional innovation in the marketplace, we'd hope to see more use and adoption of these types of solutions.
Often a plan will have no financial advisor on it, or a plan has a financial advisor that may not be attuned to being in the 401k business or talking to participants, and may choose not to do any education for the participants. That leaves it to the benefits manager, often the HR director, or the payroll person at a smaller company. Is Ascensus doing anything to help those people who are having direct contract with their employees to learn more about their retirement plans, learn more about their benefits, and enroll and do the right thing for their savings?
Yeah, certainly that's an important focus for us, and whether that's continuing to refine and simplify our auto enrollment and auto features to make it easier for participants to find themselves into the plan, and make it easier administratively for sponsors to be able to manage that, all the way through ongoing communication and engagement with individuals. Those are all really important, I think, tactics. We also think, to an earlier point, that participants need to be thinking about their savings more holistically. And oftentimes the reason that a participant isn't maximizing their contributions to a defined contribution program is because of the other savings needs or spending needs in their life. And that might range from paying down student debt to caring for a sick child or an elderly relative, or any number of other financial pressures that human beings face throughout their careers. So we're very big believers in delivering financial guidance, education. We take a lot of pride in that. We recently launched a program that packages that that guidance, that education, and some valuable tools into our overall offer at no additional expense, because we think it's so fundamental to driving more savings success.
Spoken like an ex-benefits manager.
It does. When you grow up as a plan sponsor, you have an acute appreciation for the challenges of organizations trying to help their people and balance the needs of their businesses. And I think that's also something that we can't lose sight of as industry practitioners, is while our ultimate goal is to help individuals save more to have a secure future and today, it's difficult to achieve that goal if their employer is not healthy. And we launched a program recently called Well Business, which attempts to really with and through the advisor community help support sponsors in finding more efficiency, more effectiveness, and educating them to be better stewards of their programs. And we think that's a really important component.
Yeah, I really think it starts at that middle management. Actually, it starts at the upper management of the corporation, but it's the middle managers, the benefits people, the HR people that are going to have to get the message out and stand over, in many cases, stand over somebody's workplace or get out on the manufacturing line and just get people to do the right things. And I think anytime you can arm those people with the proper information to be able to disseminate the need for savings, then everyone wins. The plan sponsor, that benefits manager, and most importantly, the plan participant.
Yeah, you bet.
Speaking of saving, we've all been saving for years, and I think it goes back to about 1932 with Franklin Roosevelt, and I'm talking about Social Security, and then a bolt on to that, which is our Medicare. And we hear just absolutely terrifying things about the trusts, both Medicare and Social Security, that they're going to run out in 2026 or 2036 or 2041. It seems that I'm going to be alive in all of those years, and so I'm just curious as to, and I'm hoping it doesn't run out until I'm gone, or I don't need it anymore. But are there trends that you've seen or information that you've seen about the health of both Medicare and Social Security? And then also, what do you think needs to be done to solidify those trusts?
Sure. Well, on the Social Security front, I believe the Board of Trustees projects 2037 really being the date through which the fund is able to pay all promised benefits. Some say that's closer to 2035. But regardless, what starts to happen is, in the absence of a payroll tax increase, that there's projections that Social Security can only fund up to 76% of benefits from that point forward. And then, throughout the years, that's relatively stable for a period of time as a function of different demographic trends. But, it obviously doesn't have a happy ending. Now, there's, a variety of options that, many of which actually have pretty broad bipartisan support, at least behind closed doors, but politically, have been a challenge to address. And, this, in some ways, this is simple math. So, there can be increases to payroll tax. There can be increases in the amount of compensation that are subject to payroll tax. There can be, potentially additional revenue streams, like transferring money from general taxes to better fund the Social Security pool. But, other changes, and maybe more talked about, are changes to benefit formulas, which could reduce benefits for certain cohorts, means testing of benefits, changes in cost of living calculations, changes to the retirement age. In fact, the movement to age 67, the phase-in for full retirement age isn't even complete until 2022. So, those are some of the common solutions that are bandied about. Some combination of those solutions, I think many believe could be implemented in ways that are both fair and generally accepted, for those not yet right in benefit payout status. But it's going to be hard politically, I think, for us to find our way to that place, which makes our mission in terms of helping people find ways to save themselves even more important, given the uncertainty in both Social Security and Medicare.
Well, are you hopeful that they'll find a solution or a number of solutions?
I'm always hopeful when it comes to our great democracy. I say that in all seriousness. I think we're a country that when we face a challenge have always figured out with our creativity to become inspired and find solutions. And despite what I think is a really charged and tumultuous political environment today, I believe we can get there. And I would say on that point, I've never been more encouraged as it relates to the alignment across both public and sort of the private spheres around the U.S. retirement savings system. We're seeing more proposals and more action with more bipartisan support than we've ever seen before, that are really taking aim at some of the fundamental opportunities to improve our savings system. And, for those like you and I that have been around for a while, I think we'd be hard pressed to identify another period where there was as much sort of bipartisan support, but B, given the experience we've had and all the learning and all the data, almost irrefutable evidence of what's really going to make a difference and matter. So I'm, in answer to your question, I'm encouraged we'll get there, and it may be baby steps along the way.
Let's change gears and talk about something even more frightening than saving for retirement, saving for college education. 529 plans. The census has been involved in the 529 industry for quite some time. In fact, you're one of the biggest players in it. Couple of quick questions. Are parents taking advantage of the opportunity to save for their children's education at the level you would have hoped that they would?
So we still see a lot of opportunity for more parents, more families to be taking advantage of the benefits of 529 programs. And a lot of the industry statistics suggest that only around 30% of Americans that are either saving for their children's education or should be saving for their children's education or even aware of 529 plans as an opportunity. So that tells us there's tremendous upside benefit. And, we also see that those that are taking advantage of 529 plans are making really meaningful progress. For those that start saving in a 529 program for their children, while those children are between 1 and 5 years old, we're seeing average balances upwards of $40,000 to $41,000 in those accounts. The average 529 account for those with children aged 16 to 17, so those soon to be moving off into college, as of 2018 year end was around $35,000. Now, $35,000 would cover about 50% of what we call a 2+2 college education, 2 years of community college and 2 years of an in-state public university, or about 41% of the total cost of a 4-year education in an in-state public university. So a meaningful bite out of the apple, still not what many families would hope to be able to achieve. But we see a lot of indications that 529 is taking more hold with more awareness, and we're focusing a lot of energy with the states to find ways to better encourage adoption and simplify the process of saving.
Anything in particular you're doing to reach through the state as a conduit or directly to parents to get them to take the steps needed to educate their children through a 529 plan?
Yeah, a couple of neat things. Lots of activity directly with states, and each state really has its own take on some of the best practices that make sense for their constituents. But we've several years back launched a program called UGift, which makes it very easy for parents to share this savings opportunity with relatives for their young children. So, you're familiar with grandma, grandpa, aunts, and uncles buying savings bonds for, young children at birth and at various milestones. Well, what if you could hand to your relatives a code? They could go online and very simply make a deposit into your child's 529 account. Isn't that a great way to simplify and expand the level of savings in these programs? And we've seen a lot of success with that type of an approach. We're also in the process of launching a new capability we call 529 Fit to take better advantage of the workplace. So, one of the obstacles to people beginning to save in a 529 program is deciding which 529 program would be most advantageous from a tax perspective for their family. So depending on the state that you live in, that can definitely influence which program makes most sense across the country. The 529 Fit tool helps a individual understand, based on some simple inputs, which program, which state 529 program or programs might be most accommodating to them and their family from a tax perspective. Being able to embed that into the retirement experience or other savings experiences in the workplace, we think will expose more individuals to the opportunity available with 529 savings, and also help them more rapidly identify the best savings vehicle.
So you are actually reaching out through the states to parents to be able to give them the information about 529 savings?
Yeah. So there's a variety of other of tactics, direct marketing, other types of electronic and non-electronic approaches that we use to spread the word in the specific states that we service.
Financial advisors, they do 529 plans, but that's not something that they're really particularly well skilled on, and probably because of the small amounts of money that go into them. But is there anything that you're doing with financial advisors to encourage them to talk to their wealth management clients about saving for retirement or saving for college education?
Yeah, we partner very closely with the distributors. Typically, these 529 programs have a technology provider and an administrator like Ascensus, as well as an asset manager / distributor that is responsible for being out in the marketplace to drive more adoption of these programs. So we work very closely with distributors to focus on the advisor community and to provide more of these tools and solutions and more of the education to the advisor community so that they can better take advantage of these programs and introduce them to their clients. And increasingly we see, high levels of adoption and a lot of interest on the part of the advisor community, particularly as advisors are looking to broaden their value proposition to their clients. Many advisors, as today are expanding their practice far beyond the traditional stock picking or, portfolio construction, and really much more focused on broader financial planning and life planning. And the savings need around education is a natural fit into that value proposition for the advisor.
Let's go to the other end of the student dilemma. You didn't save enough, you went out and borrowed money, and now we've got student loan debt hitting about $1.5 trillion. What can be done on the employer level, or is there anything that can be done on the employer level to help students, or employees, I should say, pay those things off? Because nothing is worse than, the financial stress of having to think about that large payment for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And you think that student loan assistance programs will be the next big benefit offering?
And, we certainly do think that's going to be a really popular area of focus, and appropriately so. So, again, back from the seat of the plan sponsor, I want to provide competitive benefits that give me a leg up for talent, and particularly those organizations that are focused on attracting younger talent. We know that one of the most significant pains is student debt. And in addition to attracting and retaining great people, we also want those great people to be focused at work and relieved of financial stress and burden. And, yet another great reason for plan sponsors and their advisors to be focusing on this opportunity. There's some great innovation that's happening in the marketplace today on the part of the sponsor community, introducing various forms of programs, and with the support of technology providers and other solution providers to make it easier for them to either be able to match as an example, or a recent example, match contributions to that their employee might be making to pay down debt, and sort of matching those dollars in a 401k plan. Or over time, finding ways to actually contribute in some form to the actual debt repayment. So it'll be interesting to see the way that that opportunity evolves. There's a lot of creativity and innovation that's underway right now, and I think for a lot of really good reasons.
A lot of very good reasons, like 1.5 trillion of them. So let's change gears again. You've been in the HSA business for quite some time, and with skyrocketing healthcare costs, and you hear about it, you read about it in every newspaper, you read about it online, and you hear it on every newscast about how expensive it is in the United States for healthcare. Are people enrolling in high deductible healthcare plans, and are they adding an HSA savings plan? And is there anything that you can think of to get people to do that? And what are you seeing in the marketplace of healthcare? Because it's a huge problem.
Yeah, the average couple might expect to experience upwards of $250,000 in medical expenses through the later stage of their retirement years. That's a big number for people to be saving toward. Today, about 30% of covered workers are enrolled in a high deductible health plan with a savings option, so some form of a HSA or other type of health savings account. That number continues to grow very quickly, and there's a set of trends that are driving the creation and adoption of more high deductible plans. The HSA account, health savings account, is also a wonderful vehicle and a very misunderstood tax advantage saving vehicle from the perspective of the public. It is the only savings vehicle that doesn't incur, tax on deferred dollars, doesn't incur taxation on accumulated gains in the account, and there's no taxation at time of distribution. So, people refer to that as being a triple tax advantage savings vehicle. There's no other like it. And they're also, for those that may have accumulated savings later in retirement that aren't needed for healthcare purposes, some ways to be able to convert those dollars into, or be able to take those dollars out of an account with some tax impact, but a reasonable tax impact probably at that point in time. So today it's really been thought of as a short-term vehicle to help support the annual savings needs of individuals or spending needs of individuals for healthcare. Unfortunately, for those with less disposable income, it will probably continue to be more oriented toward near-term spending needs for healthcare. But over time, as people earn more, contribute more, and hopefully live happier and healthier lives, we would expect to see more meaningful balances to be accumulated in these programs. There's a tremendous opportunity for the advisor community to help make this connection between the need for health savings, both in the near term and the longer term through retirement, and make that a part of the broader conversation around saving at the workplace, and specifically with an eye toward the amount of money that should be saved in defined contribution plans as well.
So Ascensus is really kind of at the nexus of all these different savings plans, whether it be a 401k or 403b, retirement savings program, whether it be student loans, but 529 plans for college education, and health savings accounts. Everything is essentially being record kept and administered by Ascensus. And is it going to be will you end up having it as a one-stop shop, or single sign-on, and so I can see all of my different accounts in the same place?
Well, yeah. So first I'd stress, really core to the Ascensus business model is, in all of these areas, or in most of these areas, we are supporting other institutions in the delivery of these programs. So we really come at this from the perspective of what are the types of capabilities and types of solutions that our partners choose to deliver in the marketplace. But there is no doubt that because of all the trends and themes and needs that you and I have discussed, that our partners are anxious to be able to better connect both education, assistance, advice, and ultimately product solutions across these different savings needs. And we feel Ascensus is going to be very well positioned to help those partners deliver really great solutions in the marketplace.
And you're touching, as you said at the beginning, 10 million Americans, either with all of these products or at least one of those products. Am I correct?
Yep, that's correct.
All right. Speaking of wellness and being happy and saving, financial wellness has become a catchphrase for the whole financial services industry. You can't pick up a newspaper or watch a baseball game on TV without seeing an ad for financial wellness. Your old company, Prudential, is front and center with that. Ascensus has recently jumped into the wellness business. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you see it working with those 10 million participants that you are record keeping their savings accounts for?
Yep. And I would say we've been, focused on wellness and have had, a set of capabilities for some time, but certainly recently we've looked to better create connectivity across the consideration of all these different savings needs, which really is, I think when people talk about financial wellness, what they're really talking about is how do we think about saving and spending more holistically? How do we clear the deck on those obstacles and challenges to more savings so people can lead happier and more financially secure lives today, and certainly be prepared for happier and more financially secure lives in the future. We deliver a solution in partnership with Financial Finesse that provides a personal financial assessment for every individual in the plans that are administered by Ascensus, provides suggestions and nudges and prompts for people to be able to then translate education and information into action in their lives, which is really important. And we aim to do that reactively as it relates to those that have a just-in-time need to engage around a specific question or a specific need, and also look to do it proactively in a personalized way by trying to anticipate the types of needs that an individual might have at various stages of their lives, and ensuring that we're delivering valuable, helpful resources and information at a time that it's most meaningful to them. And I think that really is at the core of a really strong financial wellness program. People, despite our best efforts to educate and try and share with people a broad spectrum of information, most people are only going to engage when there's a specific financial need that arises in their life: the birth of a new child, the sickness of a family member or a relative, the bonus, the good job promotion, all of these different events that happen in an individual's life, buying a home, buying a first car. These all prompt action, and you need to be there, ready, available, with value-added solutions for the individual when their life demands it.
We used to call that the washing machine scenario, in that you probably saw 23,000 TV commercials for washing machines, and you never paid any attention to them. And then when your washing machine breaks, it simply is the most important 30 seconds watching the Maytag repairman that you'll ever spend in your life.
You bet.
So exactly. So when those events happen, what Ascensus and their advisors and their plan sponsors are able to do is deliver a financial wellness capability that can answer questions on, or help participants with savings, with 529 plans, college savings, retirement, how to spend your money, and essentially help them through their financial anxiety.
Yeah, you've got it. And I think it provides a lot of opportunity and flexibility for the advisor community, given that advisors have different models and different levels of resource across their organizations. Being able to take advantage of these types of programs in support of their model, or provide an additional level of more personalized support for individuals or participants in plans, really puts all that opportunity at the feet of the advisor community. And I think that's really powerful. I think the other big opportunity, and something that we're very focused on today, is how we better engage with the participant via mobile, via digital means, again, in a just-in-time sort of focused way. We can't, I think, to the extent that the industry tries to boil the ocean and sort of do everything at once, it becomes really challenging and really problematic. But if you can observe when an individual has a specific change in their life, and be there in real time with a prompt or a nudge toward an action or provide some form of education or solution at that point in time. I think that's really powerful. And that's a big focus of the investments that we're making in our technology and in our digital experience.
Okay, we talked a little bit about, the transition from defined benefit plans, the old corporate pension plans and municipal pension plans, to 401ks and 403bs and defined contribution. And what we had in the past was you went to work at 20 years old on the Ford Motor plant in Detroit, and 30 years later, you got a gold watch or a gold wrench, and you walked out and you had a check a month from your pension plan. And in some cases that still exists. But the onus on investing the dollars was not on the employee or participant. It was on an investment committee and investment consultants at a very high corporate level. Now the individuals, whether they be 22 years old or 62 years old, are having to invest their monies for themselves. Are people allocating, or do you find that people are allocating their money properly? Our millennials, we talk to people, in their 20s all the time, and in many cases, their money is in a fixed account, stable value, or even a money market account, or in something that they may not be, they may be not taking any risk with. Given their time horizon of 30, 40, maybe even 50 years in savings, are they taking the proper risk to be investing for the next 30 or 40 years? And then my second question would be, baby boomers, people that are in my generation, are they taking too much risk? Are they taking, are they doing the things that they need to be doing? Because the reality is they may be retiring at 65, 66, 67, but they could be alive for the next 25 or 30 years after that.
Yeah. Also a very complex question. And, while we can look at a lot of averages by different cohorts and generations, obviously the right investment strategy is unique to the individual and their life circumstances. It's always an interesting revelation for a plan sponsor or an advisor that might look at data on a plan and see that there's certain individuals that may look like they're under risked, but then recognize that there's an individual with a life circumstance that sort of demands that risk exposure, or conversely, folks that are over risked on paper in a defined contribution plan, but you find out that their spouse has a defined benefit program with another large employer that's still active. So what I think is maybe more productive, right, to talk about, or at least more reliable to talk about, is the number of individuals today, both within retirement programs as well as in the retail investment world, that are now relying on professionals to build portfolios for them. And I think this is really the biggest sea change and positive advance for American savers, because we certainly know, looking back, maybe a couple of decades ago, in a world where individuals were left to their own devices to construct their own portfolios and make their own investment choices, that many of those choices and decisions didn't turn out well. And people have come to recognize that, and with auto enrollment and qualified QDIAs and robos and other technology enabled portfolio construction and human enabled portfolio construction, more and more Americans are now finding themselves in portfolios that have some professional guidance, advice attached to them. That's a really positive thing. I think that trend will only accelerate in the years ahead, and will enable us to focus less on correcting the problems of bad investment strategy, and more on the specific, particularly for the advisor community, helping them now focus the dialogue around spending and saving and better life planning.
Got it. As we said, Ascensus is a record keeper and administrator of multiple types of saving products. In the end, the crux of your business is savings. And I guess the big question is do you think people will save enough across their 401k plans, their HSA plans, and other plans, their IRAs? Do you think they'll save enough in the end to be able to live the lifestyle that they want to live in retirement? And of course, pass a little on to their kids.
Yeah, so I'm an optimist on this one, and I really believe that with the learnings of the past couple of decades, with the innovation that's happening in the community of sponsors and providers and advisors, that we're in a place today that more people will be on a path to having saved enough or what they need in the end. And it's no single force. It's not just auto enrollment or auto escalation. It's not just better financial wellness capabilities and solutions. It's not just better legislation that encourages more plan adoption and higher levels of saving. It's a combination of those forces. And I would just stress again, it's not what you make, it's what you spend. And I've shared it in some public forums, speaking forums, the story of my father, who I had mentioned, and his older brother, Anthony. Anthony was an entrepreneur, made a lot of money throughout his life, but was a small businessman and didn't have a trusted advisor, didn't have a structure and a plan around his savings, and unfortunately had an untimely and unfortunate health event a little bit later in his career. Unfortunately, my uncle Anthony really had a devastating period through a forced retirement. And when he passed away, he had already far exceeded the savings that he had accumulated, and there was a lot of accumulation through the years. My father, on the other hand, was a very modest engineer at Bell Labs, worked for 30 years for the same company, but a company that afforded him a defined benefit program, a company that afforded him a savings opportunity with defined contribution program. He never made anywhere near the amount of earnings or over time accumulated capital that my uncle did. But today, because of his savings habits and because of the benefits of a workplace set of savings programs, he's living a modest but very comfortable retirement with a couple of vacations a year and thankfully in good health with my mom. So to me, that it just illustrates, and I like to use it as an example of the ability of the American worker to achieve a really happy and successful retirement. But it takes work, and I think thankfully, again, a confluence of factors are making that much more easy for a much greater number of Americans today.
So in the end, it's really the old fable, the tortoise and the hare. And in this case, the tortoise normally wins.
Well said. Well said.
All right, we're coming to the end, and I thank you very much so far. But we'd like to play what we call the speed round. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and hopefully neither the questions or your answers are going to be embarrassing to either one of us. So, David Musto, let's talk about your hobbies outside of being a rock star in Built to Last. What do you like to do with your free time?
So a lot of it's still focused on family with 2 children and a loving wife. But in my spare time, getting out for a bike ride, skiing in the winter, guitar, as you mentioned, are probably my passions. and which I would suggest probably means I like outdoor sports that involve equipment. So those would be the big ones.
And what are some of your favorite books? What do you like to read?
So I always have probably 2 or 3 different types of books on my night table. I love reading rock autobiographies. So probably my favorite in that genre would be Keith Richards' book from a couple of years ago, Life. I also love historical biographies around sort of leaders and politicians and the like. So I would highly recommend, for those who haven't read it, Truman by David McCullough. And then I also have a sort of interest in science and the arts. There's a great book out recently from Walter Isaacson on Da Vinci, but another favorite from a while back is A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawkins. For those that may not have taken physics, but would like a layman's perspective on the origins of the universe.
I read both of those, and I thought they were fascinating. And but Truman was a very fine pianist, so you and he have a lot in common. Now, if I was somebody that was going to be investing my money for the first time, do you have any advice?
So coincidentally, my lovely daughter Megan, 18 years old, who's been quite the saver of her babysitting wages and other gifts throughout the years, had lunch with me, and we had this conversation. And I think it's important to keep it simple, right? Start saving. That's the most important thing. Consider how much you can afford to save, meaning, what do you need to keep available to spend so you manage your risks well. And when it comes to, that amount of money that you can invest, ensure that you're thinking about a diverse portfolio that's in line with your risk. And it was actually a fun conversation with an 18-year-old daughter to be thinking through that together. But keeping it simple for the first-time investor, I think, is incredibly important.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of that, we always ask, and obviously you've done extraordinarily well. You've had a tremendous career in the financial services and retirement business. But if you were 20 years old again, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
So, again, I'll use my family example here. My daughter, having just graduated college, I gave a little toast at a party for her and a number of her friends with their respective families. And I guess I sort of hit at your question. I suggested that really life is only about 3 things. You get to have some fun, and you really should, because life goes fast. You have an opportunity to help others and make the world a better place. And you've lost an opportunity if you haven't devoted some serious time and calories throughout your life helping the world of others. And the only thing left is then making the most of God's gifts, and really trying to excel at what you do and love what you do. So that was my hope and my wish and my toast for about a dozen young ladies entering their college careers, and I wish that was the advice that I would have had when I was 20.
That's great advice, and I'm sure all of the girls at the party will be very well served by it. David, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this edition of People and Money. And once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Ascensus. At Ascensus, they aspire to make a difference and to help people save for what matters most: retirement, education, and healthcare. Their proven combination of technology, expertise, and collaborative partnership helps individuals and families build greater confidence in their financial futures. For more People and Money, be sure to subscribe on YouTube at people.and.money. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We want to hear from you. Tell us who you'd like to hear on People and Money by leaving a comment. This is your host, Jeff K. James, signing off.